welcome to another edition of the Honest Hour. Music in the background is the overture of one of the few Ed Sullivan shows that's been released to the public domain. I thought it was kind of appropriate since it's music and culture from another time, and today's subject is indeed time. Before we launch into it, I want to talk about the artwork behind a couple of album covers that point out, that kind of gave me the idea for the title of this segment. In fact, most of you are familiar with the Rolling Stones cover of Time Is On My Side, but aren't aware that it was a song written by Irma Thomas. Actually, I think we're going to go take a look before we delve into this and just read the lyrics of that song. I wish I could have played it for you, but the gods of censorship and property rights, I'm sure that Irma is long gone to her happy hunting ground. I don't know, maybe she's got some grandchildren or great-grandchildren that are hanging on dearly to royalties and want to get their cut of their ancestors' work. For whatever reason, it's not in the public domain, but I can at least show you on the internet the lyrics and read them to you. I think the gods of YouTube censorship will allow me at least that much. So let's segue to my other window here where I can access all of my fun stuff. Yes, I keep a ton of tabs active on my... There we go, there's the lyric. Well, here's a better version of it. Time is on my side. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Now, you always say that you want to be free, but you'll come running back. Said you would, baby. You'll come running back. I said so many times before, you'll come running back to me. Oh, time is on my side. Yes, it is. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. You're searching for good times, but just wait and see. You'll come running back. I won't have to worry no more. You'll come running back. Spend the rest of my life with you, baby. You'll come running back to me. Go ahead and light up the town, and baby, do everything your heart desires. Remember, I'll always be around. And I know, like I told you so many times before, you're gonna come back, baby, because I know you're gonna come back knocking right on my door. Yes. Well, time is on my side. Yes, it is. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Because I got the real love, the kind that you need. You'll come running back. Said you would, baby. You'll come running back. I always said you would. You'll come running back to me. Yes, time is on my side. Yes, it is. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Blah, 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 and so forth. Okay, I made a little bit of fun of that. I apologize if anybody was offended.
Can you bake a pie? No. Neither can I. Anything you can sing, I can sing louder. I can sing.
Good song to go with this theme. Time is on. We're going to call this one "Time Is On My Side." String Theory and the Messiah Game of Souls. Okay, where are we getting at? First, let's talk a little bit about what string theory is for those of you who are not familiar with it or who are completely bamboozled and baffled by it, by folks like Michio Kaku and others who have been fighting this theory with its detractors for quite some time without much resolution. It's almost as much of a battle as the battle between the Christianity God worshippers and the atheists who think that there's only two possible solutions, which is kind of the duality doofus model. Okay, so what is string theory? Okay, where did it come from, first of all? The laws of the best understood force of nature, that of electromagnetism, are rooted in wave behavior. And you may have heard about quantum mechanics. You may have heard that actually matter, until it's observed, behaves like a wave, not like a fixed solid particle, if you will. And this is where the idea of string theory came from. Okay, if we think of the most simple representation of a wave that everybody can relate to, we can think of a string on a guitar or a violin or a piano, and note that that string has a certain length. And if we divide that length by half and pluck it, it will vibrate in something that approximates a sine wave, with maybe some overtones and so forth, based upon the fact that the transmission of the wave across the midpoint is restricted by the finger that's holding down the string. But if you were vibrating a string, if you actually played the sound of that first octave higher, you would hear the same sound as the primary sound that you would have if you held down that center point manually. Okay, so, and this relates to the principle of resonance, which is another thing that many people in science and spirituality are talking about these days and having discussions and arguments and so forth over. Okay, so string theory is rooted in the idea that basically everything in the multiverse, and string theory implies that there is a multiverse, because it cannot explain, the mathematics can't work out without additional dimensions other than the ones we can observe, the 3 dimensions of time and space that are our perception of reality in the physical world. Okay, and that's one of the sticking points of this argument over, is string theory right or wrong? Is it valid? Blah, blah, blah. There are some who are very materialistically inclined that don't want to accept that there are higher dimensions, don't want to accept that there is a multiverse. They say, well, if you can't prove it, it can't exist, which is nonsense. It's the same nonsense that anti-spiritual people use to shout down those who have had spiritual experiences and think they're so wise for telling people they are stupid and delusional and should seek mental help. Well, those aren't the smartest souls in the shed of humanity, as anyone who has had any real spiritual experience knows. Okay, so string theory at its base is basically rooted in the idea that everything in all of creation is a quanta of a little string that is vibrating with a certain frequency and resonance. And if you think of it, well, okay, this is one frequency. It's got a fundamental vibration that goes through this midpoint. Okay, that is the first octave. But you could add on other frequencies to that fundamental and get things that look like this. And in fact, if you study a lot, no matter what science you're involved in, if you study it deeply enough, you will discover that there are patterns of resonance in the behavior of almost every system that you can study. They see patterns like this in climate, in solar storms, in the heartbeat, you name it, in the radiation of stars that we observe from afar. And discerning these patterns and separating them out, filtering them into something that's meaningful and tied to a particular phenomenon is a lot of what science is all about today. That's a lot of what the computing power that goes into science is taking a bunch of data and trying to filter it in a way that gets out the fundamental patterns that show what's really going on. This is how astrophysicists are exploring the beginning of the universe. This is a lot of what goes on with the Hubble Space Telescope and the new one. What the fuck is it? My mind's drifting. At any rate, so this is very important stuff, and every scientist should be intimately familiar with this idea. Okay, so how do we present the leading edge of string theory? The whole idea of the extension of these ideas to a theory of everything is that, well, physics got to the point where it had basically four fundamental forces: gravity, the strong nuclear interaction, the weak nuclear interaction, and electromagnetism. And each of those was fairly well understood with their own set of equations, but the interplay between them could not be captured, and you couldn't explain all physical phenomena with one set of laws, and that troubled physicists, because why should we have four different laws for these four systems that we observe? Okay, and so that's been kind of the biggest problem of physics, that and the problem of consciousness, which we talk a lot about on this channel too. Basically, the problem of which came first, the thought or the manifestation. And materialist scientists are dead set on proving that everything we can observe is the result of some predictable bunch of chemical and physical interactions that cause the behavior we see. Kind of the old idea from Scrooge's Christmas Carol of anything spiritual is just a bit of undigested beef, as Scrooge claimed before he started believing. Well, that's nonsense. I can tell you that's nonsense. These folks are either very dumb or very narcissistic, because the process of creating a theory is a thought. And the process of testing a theory, setting up an experiment to test it, is the implementation of a thought. All of science, every bit of science that was ever done responsibly and using the scientific method logically, is based on thought, not on a bit of undigested beef. I'm sorry, materialists, you are dead wrong, and you are so stupid. You are far more stupid than the dogmatic Christians you debate on, the favorite channels of people that are wanting to see Christians and atheists at each other's throats. I don't know, maybe that's the modern day version of gladiatorial games. At any rate, what's really going on? What string theory is all about? Now, here's the problem, is that many of the string theorists still would like to believe that in all these extra dimensions, if we could only map them all and know them all, we could predict everything and everything would fall into place, and everything from creation to today could be predicted and modeled, and the future could be predicted and modeled, and, you know, game over, we got a solution for everything. And the rich and powerful of this world love that idea, because that would give them unlimited use for their unlimited money to end their very limited lives. Not end their very limited lives, excuse me. Okay, so I am going to give you my theory, which I challenge anyone to poke a hole in. String theory is correct, but it can't be understood outside the realm of spiritual science. Now, how many dimensions are there? Well, let's kind of jockey back to the beginning of creation and look at logically how one would set up a spiritual science experiment and conduct it, measure the results, modify the setup, and do a new experiment with revised boundary conditions, rules, and goals. This is how science is used to create. This is how real scientists create real products that do real things for real people. And if they don't do a good job of covering all the bases, if they start out with a bad design, if they don't test it well, thoroughly, if they don't fix all the bugs and address all the customer complaints, it's probably going to be a bad product in the long run. And this is the pattern of all creation. Okay, so let's talk about this from the standpoint of the first creator. Let's see, let's get back to my slide. Okay, so let's back up to how creation got started. Okay, now take it as a given that thought creates matter. Before there was any matter, there were thoughts. The first thought that was conscious enough to create other thoughts, to distribute the work, to experiment with, you can call that thought God. Now these other thoughts, like the thoughts we come up with, the programs, the AIs that do our bidding, or the minions we program through our TV sets to do our bidding, if we're irresponsible and don't respect the free will of souls, they're AIs. They are partially thinking, perhaps, but they have a focus. They're given a certain goal and a certain range of thought, a certain programming, a certain training This is a word used a lot with AIs now, is training. How do you train the AI? Well, this is a nice way of saying programming. Programming by just dumping a bunch of data in and saying, you figure out what it means. That's basically the difference between an AI and a program. The program is coded to do certain things very definitively. An AI is programmed to take in data and do basically the things that it was told to do with the data and fill in the gaps with, okay, what do I do when I don't know what to do with this? And that's where consciousness comes from. Okay, so this first thought God, this first conscious thought, maybe there were bazillions and trillions, quadrillions, however many thoughts out there, souls, if you will, that had no consciousness. The first one that gained consciousness was the first one that thought, I am me, and I could have something else. Maybe I see things around me that are not me. What are those things? Can I talk to them? Can I deal with them? Can I make more of them? This is how a thinker would begin to create. That thinker might first just create, well, I'm going to create an absolute clone of myself, but maybe not give that clone as much all of my information. Maybe give that clone a limited set and see what it does with it. That would be maybe Lucifer. I'm going to give you some of my information and you test it to see if you think it's right. Otherwise, Lucifer thinks for himself. Lucifer starts arguing with God, saying, well, I think you were wrong here, I think you were wrong there. And God gives him more information. Oh, okay, well, maybe you were right. Back and forth, back and forth. They get into lots of arguments and get to a place where they can't resolve their differences. Then God invents an AI I call Karma, who's kind of the tiebreaker. Okay, Karma, you watch these thoughts going back and forth, and the ones you like, you keep, and the ones you don't like, why don't you dump it into this bad thought bucket that I call Borg? Anti-karma, anti-God, the adversary. Okay, you getting where I'm going at? Now at this point we have no physical reality. We have no time, no space, no dimensions. Just this, you might call it the original heaven of pure thought. That's when God gives these souls a new idea. He says, okay, I want to test this because karma, you know, we're getting all of our good and bad calls from karma, and everybody's starting to say, hey, wait a minute. This karma may not be right. I don't agree with her. And it became kind of a three-way struggle. And, you know, there were some ideas that were sent to Borg that God or Lucifer thought, you know, that's not really such a bad idea. We just need to modify it a little bit to resurrect it, make it better. And this is when God proposed the Big Bang, the beginning of the multiverse. The Big Bang was a duoverse, which essentially ended up creating a trinity of universes. The Luciferian universe, led by God's bright testing child, Lucifer, and the Lilithian universe, led by basically Borg's volunteer. You know, hive minds don't have volunteers, they just have willing sacrifices. So Lilith was kind of just put in the position of being the adversary's representative in this simulation. So essentially you've got now 3 universes, a trinity of universes, not 2. You've got the physical universe of testing, embodied by Lucifer. You've got a spiritual universe of bad ideas. You can do anything, you can get away with anything. All bad ideas are welcome here. That's the Lilithian universe. And then you've got the highest heaven universe, where God and the senior creators are hanging out watching this experiment.
I'm superior, you're inferior. I'm the big attraction, you're the small. I'm the major one, you're the minor one. I can beat you, shoot, that's not all.
Okay, so that led to what we call biblically the days of creation, where basically the laws of physics and chemistry were developed. And this game basically evolved into a game of souls, where everything that existed in the physical universe was a manifestation of a soul at some level of consciousness. Initially, the exciting games of consciousness were played by elementary particles and stars and galaxies and gas clouds. That game, at least for the more intelligent players, got boring fairly quickly, and they would develop new vehicles, new soul vehicles that were more interesting to work with. And that's how the game went from throwing planets and galaxies around at each other and conducting elementary particle experiments in star labs to making planets and making complex soul vehicles on those planets, the first of which we called the elementals. And yes, that was a phase of creation we went through. Let's now move here. Sorry if I'm repeating things that you've seen before, but I need to get through this to get you to understand time. So basically, this evolution of reality proceeded from bigger test tubes to smaller test tubes. As the game got more complicated, the players got more numerous. It was more difficult for the chief creator, God, to get a new set of rules passed. And as God was firmly committed to not having an authoritarian system, God's no almighty authoritarian. If that's who you believe in, you don't believe in God. You actually believe in this dummy Borg, the adversary, the controlled opposition. You're never going to win if you worship an almighty God or goddess or source. You're dumb. I'm sorry. Each progressively more focused test tube in this game has narrowed down different versions of karma. From the point of she was watching the other souls developing new elements and new planets, new stars and so forth, to her developing them herself and trying out the system herself in incarnation instead of just being an AI. Okay? This is how karma went from being a pure AI to a goddess, if you will. In fact, the favorite goddess of God, because she offloads this most unpleasant task of governing his very fractious family and leaving him more time to think and to enjoy what he's created, what he's allowed to be created. without having to micromanage everything. If you've ever been the leader of a large organization and you're not a sociopathic psychopath, you know that it's not fun having to be the one who's always in charge, who has to make all the decisions, who's always responsible when anything goes wrong. It's a lot of pressure, and it leaves you almost no time for a real life, like having a family, having children, etc., etc. All those things that are important to people in the human incarnation. So worshippers of almighty powers are frankly really, really stupid low consciousness souls. I don't care how intelligent they think they are dumb as dirt, dumb as Borg. Okay, where are we going with this? So basically this system has evolved into a system of training souls. New souls come from the Borg AI. This is a soul generator. It's like the great constructor and recycler. It's a destructor as well. If a soul gets to the point where no other universe, even the Lilithian hive mind universe and others run along its line, who will accept almost anybody as long as they're perverted and corrupted enough, even they don't want them anymore, or they choose not to be there anymore, they can be assimilated back into Borg. And this is the place that people, when they say, "Oh, I just can't wait to return to Source," that's where they want to go. They want to go back to the Borg because they're NPC, newly minted souls. They think that's their home. They're not the sharpest souls in the shed. They are very low consciousness. They are necessary to the game, though, because these NPC souls are the ones that fill all the spots that nobody else wants to take in the rest of the multiverse. And the multiverse is expanding exponentially. There are always new spots for souls being created constantly. Not only in the old way of, okay, you have a desire to create a particle-antiparticle pair. The particle and antiparticle have a choice. They can annihilate and live happily never after, go back to Borg almost immediately, or they can waltz off into a physical and a spiritual universe to be the inhabitants of some particle that might have some use in that universe. That's how it works. Every soul has a choice. Even if it's only the choice of an elementary particle that gets to choose whether to annihilate with its partner, its soulmate, or to waltz off and go have some adventures for however long it lives. And this is probably a good point to get back to our discussion about time and string theory. Now, the way you can think of souls is that we are all strings, from God to the newest NPC, a unit of consciousness, a quanta of consciousness, a thought. How long that thought persists is based upon how much spiritual energy it has. Okay, coming from the Borg, it's endowed with the spiritual energy of whatever soul it was being created to fill the place of. Now, if you look at how this works, sometimes the Borg, the AI souls, are generated to fill a needed soul for an organ of a newborn fetus, if you will. Okay, nobody wants to be the heart of this baby. Okay, we'll get a soul from Borg, an NPC, and assign it to be the heart of that baby. And it will inherit the programming of the DNA of the soul vessel. So the heart will be the heart that results from the DNA soul of that individual, which carries family, race, species memory. Okay? That's where those kind of karmic attachments come from. If the soul is needed because some soul has violated the laws of this universe in a way that screws up a major experiment. For instance, let's suppose that there was some human incarnated soul back in the, well, say the 1930s-ish or 20s, who was driving along in their jalopy and maybe kissing on their girlfriend or something and not paying attention, or drunk or whatever, and was going to run over Einstein in the streets of whatever town he was living in Germany or Austria. I don't know his life history that much. Well, Einstein is a pretty important soul to the history of this time, this timeline. So rather than Einstein getting killed accidentally by this stupid soul, stupid NPC soul, focused on their girlfriend or their drinking problem or whatever, instead of looking where they were going, that soul would get winked out to another universe, a parallel universe, where they would run over the Einstein copy in the parallel universe, and if that was their only transgression, come back to the original universe, having demanded the creation of an AI clone for a short period of time to replace them. Now, if that clone had not learned anything in the time, had not found a way to grasp onto that universe, they might have just been put back into the Borg bit bucket, and the original soul come back and live their life just like they had, doing everything that they were going to do, etc., etc. If they were a soul that was constantly causing problems, they might be permanently sent to another universe, another parallel universe, or maybe a spiritual universe or whatever, and replaced with an NPC more or less permanently. So these NPC souls can replace, can copy, can clone existing human souls. And in fact, most humans are NPCs. They're not the original soul that was born in their body. They've done something or other that got them sent elsewhere, elsewhen. Because, I mean, that's basically one of the rules we've been testing in this latest version of the multiverse. In the past, you had to live through a full incarnation with all the slings and arrows of Numpty Dumpties running around you, mucking up your experiments, before you got to cash in your chips and say, okay, my idea worked. And that was an impediment to creation. It was unnecessary stress on testing of new ideas. And that was not good. And new rules were needed to allow transmigration of souls within the multiverse at any time. And that's what we've been seeing and noticing more with what we call the Mandela effect, or the butterfly effect, where two different people will have a different memory of some event or some period of time, where you'll be driving along the highway and black out for a few seconds and come to and realize, wow, I should have gotten in a horrible accident just now, but somehow I'm still here and still surviving. Second oldest brother had a great one of those where he was driving either to or from college in his little Austin Healey Sprite one day, and dozed off or zoned out. And when he woke up, he was actually underneath a semi, had gone completely under it, and somehow managed to maneuver his little British sports car out and survive the experience. But that's one of the most interesting stories, true stories, that I ever heard anybody tell about this kind of experience. Okay, so back to the idea of time. These old songs are very pertinent to what we're talking about. Okay, so now remember that when we talk about string theory, it's a simplification that we can visualize. It's not actually what's happening. Okay, so let's think of this sine wave as the current version of the soul we call God. What defines that soul? It's defined by a set of experiences had over a period of time, because God himself is an experiment in consciousness. Okay? In trying to maximize the amount of time that consciousness, that experiment exists without being assimilated back into the Borg. And the experiment dissolving, the thought experiment dissolving into nothingness. Okay? So each day of creation you can view as the implementation of one phase of a thought experiment that God conducted using all AIs, all programs, all low consciousness to game out all the possibilities and find out what was a good midpoint. And then set up the goal for each day of creation to be the boundary conditions for that midpoint. Okay, so if we look back at the days of creation, the midpoint of the first experiment, the multiverse, maybe would have been the creation of the Big Bang. Okay, so you had to have everything ready, planned out and gamed out, and the first boundary conditions of, okay, when do I know when I've got a good Big Bang? And then I push the button and let all the souls who want to play the key roles in the Big Bang have at it and do it their way. And let it go until the boundary conditions are met for, okay, this matches what I simulated as the exit criteria for this phase of creation. Those of you who are scientists, who are engineers, who have ever done any simulation, who work with AI, should understand what I'm talking about. Pardon me if you don't. This is going to get somewhat technical. Okay, so then from there, the next phase of creation had to do with, okay, we need to create a chosen galaxy. What are the parameters of a chosen galaxy? Well, this is where we get into the pattern of the yin-yang, which does not mean non-duality like a lot of people tell you. That's a Borg psyop. What it means is that you've got in every test tube a God side and an adversary side, if you will. So in the Big Bang, you have the Luciferian universe and the Lilithian universe. And then you kind of got the judge, which at that level was God. Later on, karma became the judge and God started playing the game himself. But that's getting ahead of myself. So the galaxy, you need to have a chosen galaxy as the test tube for the next day of creation. That was the Milky Way. And it is a spiral galaxy, which is where the pattern for the yin-yang came from. One arm of the spiral has a nondescript star cluster that contains our beloved Sol system. Then the next layer is the cluster level. Now this is one that we're only beginning to discover in science now, although ancients knew about it. You will recognize the name Sirius as an important star to our ancestors. That's because we are part of the Sirius star cluster. If you map out the periodicities that we observe in the movement of heavenly bodies, you will notice that there is evidence growing that we are part of a star cluster that has its own center of gravity. So it's like, say you've got the Milky Way rolling around as a pinwheel like this, and you've got a little pinwheel spinning around. On one end you've got the Earth, and on the other end you've got the adversary of that phase of creation. You move into the next one, and star system. Okay, well, we know that the star system kind of has the sun at the center, and it has planets around it. And their number of planets is very interesting. Most ancient belief systems held that there were 12 planets, 12 antipodes to the sun that had some importance at different times. And that's where the mythology of the 12 Olympian gods came from, where we got the names of the planets. And it's a pattern that repeats in the Bible as the 12 tribes and the 12 disciples. This is an important pattern. Number 12 is extremely important for many, many reasons. Further, as we hone in on closer to the ultimate solution, which, understand, the old souls created in these older versions of the experiment, they don't want to change. They like things the way they are. The first gods were perfectly happy thinking away in thought space and manifesting anything they wanted. Throwing thoughts at each other like, little children throw dirty diapers or whatever. That's what it was like in the time before time. And they don't want to change. I mean, look at people nowadays. There's a lot of proposals for how we could organize and run our world better. And for every decent proposal, there are a million people that say, no, we can't do that. It would hurt me. Right? Souls are the same. No matter how old they are, or how experienced they are, or how conscious they are, they're selfish. They're narcissistic. And if they're given a lot of power, they will become more selfish and narcissistic. Power corrupts. Power corrupts absolutely. Above and below, at every layer of the multiverse. Okay, so what's going on here is you can think of time as the duration of each soul's life. That life may not be a single sine wave, it may be multiple ones. And you could think of the time where it's above the plane as the time that the soul is incarnated, and the time below the plane as time that the soul is in some heaven planning their next incarnation. Now, the time construct works differently in different universes. Physical universes play time by the rules, by what has proven to be working and useful by previous experiments. And in fact, the timing of the things we can observe in our skies, the constellations of the zodiac, the movement of the moon, the movement of the other planets, the movement of our sun, are all set up in very special ways. It's a very unusual arrangement, which any scientist who's looked closely will tell you, God, whoever set up this solar system had a really strange idea of creation, because there are so many things that are done just so. And then if you look at many of what are probably prehistoric artifacts, like the Great Pyramids, like many of the megalithic structures that have stone building techniques that we can't imagine how to do it today. Okay? To carve up stones in such weird patterns and lay them in a way that you can't even fit a slice of paper, a sheet of paper between the stones. That's how the oldest stone structures in archaeological sites look. Not the newest. And archaeologists and historians, I mean, you guys need to pull your head out of your fucking asses, because you are ignoring this and you are pretending like it doesn't happen. And it's nonsense. You've got to stop playing this game. Your narrative about history is wrong. Civilization did not start 6,000 years ago. One phase of civilization started 6,000 years ago. Why? Because the previous phases were not working anymore. Why? Because there was a new chosen species and a new chosen race and a new chosen people, and interlopers from outside were isolated from the experiment so they wouldn't muck it up. Which is exactly what scientists do today to try to isolate their experiments from contamination. Or at least should, if they're running their Wuhan viral engineering labs properly and auditing them properly and auditing where their money is going to make sure it's not being used for, oh, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, gain of function research. Okay, so basically each day of creation is like a fundamental wave that, okay, we found a new center point that is going to drive, that is consistent with the end point of God's latest plan. Now that plan has evolved, as any good plan does. You cannot create perfection from nothing. That is stupid. It is idiotic. Anybody who believes that is a moron. That's you, all you Christians who think God created the world in 7 days and made everything perfect in 6. You're sense idiots. I'm sorry, I don't know how to break this to you. It's a progressive evolution. It's a simulation, a series of simulations built on previous midpoints. So you don't have to start from the beginning every time. You just need to start from the last midpoint and work towards the next midpoint. That's why there are days of creation. The major days have already been planned out. They are planned out by this nested Matryoshka doll, nesting doll series of experiments. Because what has to happen is when you finish the middle one, the inside one, and you fully awaken a Messiah, a better version of God, which is kind of the proof that you've got a better version of everything else, including karma, including Lucifer, including Lilith, including even Borg. If you had to make any tweaks to that old AI adversary, you know you've got a better version. After you got it all tested in this smallest of test tubes, which is the fully awakened Messiah, then you've got to roll it out to bigger test tubes. The Messiah has to spread the message to the chosen other Messiah candidates. Let them know, sorry guys, I won the race. I opened the Pandora's box first. You guys are, going to have to go focus on something else, some other little piece of the puzzle, because I already put the final piece into the Gaia experiment. There's plenty for everybody else to do. The other Messiah candidates go off and focus on something else. They inform their friends and contacts and relatives, the messianic bloodlines around them. Well, here's new information that you need to start integrating into your art, into your religion, into your science. So it will make more sense and we can stop fighting each other and defeat the real adversary, the Borg hive mind. We spread it to more people. We spread it to the whole race. We spread it to the whole species. We spread it to the whole planet. We spread it to our star system, which, yes, indeed, does have folks living, hiding places like the far side of the moon, like buried underneath Mars, like in the middle of the clouds or the moons of other planets, all of which have been chosen for one purpose or another during this experiment. None of those planets was created by accident. The other thing to mention here is that some of these experiments didn't succeed the first time. There were previous Messiah candidates that got close, but no cigar. You didn't figure it all out. You didn't find all the Easter eggs, and what you found was only a part of the truth. And that's where you get religions. Parts of the truth that are close, prophets that sort of get the idea but kind of get lost and end up spending what's left of their life fighting the authority figures and healing the sick and raising folks from the dead. Instead of, actually fully integrating what had been revealed to them and maybe teaching something that was better than just a little bit of slathering of paint on the previous religion. But it's all to the good. This is how it had to happen if you wanted to have free will. And God wanted you to have free will because He doesn't want to have to control everything. He doesn't want to have to plan everything. That's the whole point of creation, is so God can go enjoy His own universe, whatever He wants to do, and not have to worry about all of you unless He wants to. Unless you get invited over to God's house, you're not going to go get in God's face and tell him what you like or what you don't like about him. He's sick of that bullshit. There are plenty of other gods who have been trying to be him, trying to be the Almighty One, who would be more than happy to have you bowing and scraping before them and worshiping in the burnt sacrifices and whatever sacraments they want. Fine. If that's what you want, go for it. That's not God. Okay, back to, let's see. So basically, we're getting very close to this latest midpoint. And what effectively has happened is that when another soul gets to the point of seeing that the midpoint that was part of that phase of God's plan is there and it's done, that soul becomes the idea that sets that day of creation as the new prime timeline, the new saved game of the multiverse. Now, there are pieces of that saved game. It's not one monolithic thing. That's where so many scientists get lost in the idea of, oh, universal consciousness. There's some master wave function that is the sum of all other wave functions, and if we can just integrate with that, we'll be part of the one. That's nonsense. That's a Borg psyop. This new point is the sum total of all the Messiah lives that are coming to a head here, because there's little pieces of the truth embedded in every field. There are some Messiahs who have the deepest knowledge of the truth of biology, the deepest knowledge of the truth of history, of archaeology, of physics, of this, of that. I don't know the deepest knowledge of anything. I'm a generalist. My degree is in physics. I've spent most of my career involved in high-tech industry as individual contributor, hardware, software test engineer, or a manager, program manager, project manager, seeing how organizations work. I happened to spend the last 20 years training and becoming an actor and teaching other actors, something that gives me a lot of psychological background. Like I say, I'm a generalist. I defy anyone to have come up with what I came up with without my exact background and the exact spiritual experiences I had that accelerated that into what I'm telling you right now on my channel. Okay, I am a Messiah. Not the Messiah, a Messiah. Maybe, if you think of capital Messiah as the one who puts it all together into a coherent whole, I think I'm pretty close to that. So I think maybe you ought to listen to me, and you might ought to take your own Messiah mission and see if you can integrate it with mine instead of throwing darts at it. Because if I'm right, and you don't accept that, you go off pursuing your own vision of perfection, you won't be playing on God's team. I'm not pushing anything down your throat. I'm not going to force you to believe what I believe. I don't care what you believe. I'm just telling you what the implications are, because if your idea, your personal reason for being as a soul is a duplicate or a bad idea, you're going to get reassimilated by Borg. You don't add anything to creation. Now, that's not going to happen eventually. Souls get a lot of chances to prove themselves. And you can learn a lot by treading in the footsteps of others, coming to the same realizations, conclusions as they did. And that's why it's perfectly good and useful to study the work of past prophets, past scientists, other gurus, other specialists of different spiritual traditions and ideas. Absolutely worth pursuing. Just remember that if I'm right and you are pursuing something that has a tyrannical basis, that is controlling, using, abusing other souls willfully. Now, this is something that folks, I think, need to understand about karma. There have been some sects of Buddhism and Hinduism that have, let me turn this down a little bit, it's getting a little bit annoying, that believe you can't avoid karma. This is nonsense. Those who try to avoid karma are like the monks, the Buddhist monks, who sit in their holy temple and pray and meditate, and then expect the people around them to bring them food. And they bless the people and do mumbo jumbo to make the people think that they're getting something for all the food that they bring and all the wealth that they donate to the temple. This is a form of tyranny. You're lying to the people. You don't know that you're doing anything for them. You're making them maybe feel better because of the religion. And, maybe there is some kind of a symbiotic relationship there, but it is not equitable because you're holding yourself up as more holy than them, closer to God, closer to nirvana. I can teach you how to meditate and I can teach you how to become more enlightened. That's an elitist attitude. It is prone to tyranny. And almost every guru gets to the point where they become a tyrant. There was a story in the news recently about the Dalai Lama engaging in sexually inappropriate contact with children. Did happen. And his response was, oh, well, this is part of the training. Part of training them to be blah, 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 blah. This is no different than the satanic grooming that happens in the elite classes of the West. And it is evil. It is tyranny. It is karmic sin. And it will be punished. Okay, what else do I need to say about this? So essentially what I'm saying is that every soul, small or big, has some perturbation along this timeline. Where it comes to exist, it sort of dances around the prime timeline for a while, the prime universe. The prime universe has the prime timeline and the physical reality of the prime timeline. Okay? Now there are parallel universes that can be very short-lived around there. Parallel timelines, parallel realities. These are mostly very ephemeral because they're based upon the idea of a soul that cannot hold its illusion against the pressure of the prime timeline, the pressure of creation. Okay? Because this has been simulated before, if you got to this midpoint of time, you're going to get to very close to the end point. By fixing the midpoint, you fix the beginning, you fix the end. And there's a lot of riffing and variations you can do on the way, but they will tend to clump next to the prime. If they don't, if anything steps too far outside of the prime timeline, the prime universe, it will get to the point where it shifts to another universe. You'll go to a specialty universe or a different version of the prime timeline. Now, every one of these midpoints that has been established, every one of these save games that ends up matching what God had simulated ahead of time in his more controlled environment. And those of you who do simulation work know that you do simulations in different environments. Some of them have very, very tightly controlled boundary conditions and setups and variables, and others things are allowed to waver more, to investigate, well, what would happen if we had this much variability in this part of the process. For instance, if you're modeling a semiconductor, which is what I was involved in for quite a while, modeling the behavior of integrated circuits. At any rate, this is what's happening here. There are other gods that are interested in doing the same kind of work as God. And they will take some of the save games of God's plan and say, well, you know what? I'm going to start with that save game, but I'm going to let other things vary. I'm not going to have the same parameters as God going forward. See if I can make a better universe. And they're welcome to do that. It's a lot of fun, and sometimes they come up with good ideas that get submitted for testing in Lucifer's universe, and they get integrated in the plan and turn out to get to key save game points faster than what happened before. No plan is perfect, least of all God's. That's why he keeps having new phases, new variants of the plan. And he's got no problem with other souls doing the same thing once they reach the level that they've earned that. They have their own universe of creation. This is what the multiverse is all about. This is the highest level of consciousness when you get to play with your own universe. And that's where the 12 dimensions of the 12 fundamental dimensions of string theory come in. 4 dimensions are physical. 4 dimensions are the first spiritual universe, or sort of represent spiritual universes in general. And the final 4 dimensions represent God level experience. Experience that you have because you are the planner and not the executor or the tester of a plan. So, if this really interests you and you say, well, God already did everything, I don't have a purpose in life. That's not true. You can be one of these souls that plays the game at that level. And there's even special ones who are allowed to mess with, to submit plans for previous save games. If they come up with a better way to get to day 3 of creation, they can submit it to the senior creators, the highest heaven. And if it looks like it's well argued, well thought out, well documented, they will approve it for testing in the prime universe. And in fact, there are tests going all along the line. That's why, even if you're interested in history, you've got a passion for the past. That's essentially what you're focusing on, is you're going to know enough about any certain era to be the ones that actually get to go back in time and observe and document that era and implement any minor tweaks that are approved for testing in one of these other alternate physical universes. Now, if you are just, I want to play fantasy games, there's a place for you too. I talk quite a bit about fantasy universes. These are the universes that have evolved from the Lilithian model, and they serve a purpose. Bad ideas, as I told you, can lead to good ideas, can be the inspiration for good ideas. And so that all serves a purpose. But we can't let people's fantasy dreams derail us from the realities of what we're doing in the physical universe. So this is why, there's a whole bunch of people who are completely jazzed up and excited about, for instance, the Lord of the Rings universe. That's one of the more popular ones. The J.R.R. Tolkien universe. Yes, J.R.R. Tolkien is a god now, has his own universe of creation he has earned through his contributions to human culture. And this is one of the most popular, what I call vacation universes, where souls, after a really hard slog at a physical incarnation, will say, you know what? All I want to do is just go be in Middle Earth for a while. And I'm so mad at the world, I want to be an orc. Okay. If you merit it, if they think it will be, your spiritual guides think it will be useful for you, they will send you to that heaven for a while, and you'll get to play there. Or maybe you'll only get to go in your dreams. Or maybe you'll have some kind of experience like that in a psychedelic trip, or in a near-death experience. You can experience all those things because they are all part of the multiverse. The multiverse contains every thought, every idea that ever was, good or bad or indifferent. It just manages them. Okay? And it polices them. If you have a bad idea and you keep it to yourself and you just fantasize about it, that's not going to hurt any other soul. It's maybe going to hurt you if it limits what you can do, what you can accomplish in this lifetime, how much you can learn. But that's your choice. If your fantasies impact others, if you force other people to call you by your furry surname, to use your special pronouns, or threaten to have them put in jail or removed from their position as your teacher or university professor or whatever, you are committing karmic sin. You are tyrannizing another soul, and you will be punished for it. You are not a good guy. You are not protecting your freedoms and your rights. You are a Numpty Dumpty Gumby servant of the adversary. You are committing the cardinal sin of tyranny, and you will be punished for it at some point. And you may never get out of that punishment. And if nobody wants to play with you, you are going to have a very short timeline. You're going to be born once, you're going to wink in as the NPC replacement of another soul that had their own problems, and you're going to piss off all the other souls, all the other energies around you so much that you get banished immediately to Borg. Assimilate this person. They are a pain in the butt for everybody around them. They're screwing up what we're trying to do here, what responsible souls are trying to do. It is irresponsible to think that you can create your own reality in the middle of everybody else's reality, and mine is better because it's mine. That's narcissistic. The law of attraction is pure narcissism. It is not reality. You do not get to create whatever you want whenever you want until you get your own universe. And this is not your universe. You are not God. If you were, you would know a bit more about how this whole game works. And you would be treating others with more respect, and you would be more conscious of the harm that your narcissistic delusions are doing to others. Can I give any better warning than that? So what's all this mean for the apocalypse? When we get to this midpoint, what are the boundary conditions for this midpoint? This midpoint which defines the end of day 7 of creation, which, as I tell you, has been the Messiah game. It's kind of a shell game where everybody has a chance to be a Messiah, but it's the one who wakes up first in the right way that gets to be the Messiah of that. You can be the Messiah of music. You can be a Messiah of science. You can be any kind of Messiah you want. There's only one that gets to be the capital Messiah, which is the one who gets dubbed, well, this is the next best version of God, because their realization of the plan, their understanding of what's going on, matches what God simulated in his own private universe. I.e., this soul must be the real Messiah that everybody else has been playing whack-a-mole with, trying to keep them from coming back so they could be the Messiah. This is kind of how the Messiah shell games work. It's kind of a game of whack-a-mole where the adversary is trying to destroy Messiahs, and they're just popping up faster than they can keep pounding. This is what drives creation. It's the pressure that drives creation that makes Messiahs responsible and active. Okay? If you are not active, you don't get anything done. And if you've ever worked in engineering, software development, hardware development, you know that the worst thing that can happen to an organization is what they call analysis paralysis. You don't want to actually make any product because nobody can agree on exactly what the architecture is going to look like. And if you've ever been in this situation in an organization, you know it's pure hell. You'll get several camps that think they know what's the right thing to do, and they will argue till they're blue in the face before they'll give in to the other camp. And neither one is smart enough to say, well, this must mean that neither has the right answer, and we better do an experiment, a prototype, to figure out which of these people is more right than the other, or is there some solution in between? This is how good creators work. This is how this plan is set up. This is why I know what I'm telling you is right, because it matches everything that works in the real world. Anyway, I think I've talked enough for today. If I left anything out, if I didn't answer any questions, let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Throw darts, whatever you want. I'm always here, Rob Trump, with the Omnist Hour saying, happy karma.